Good morning, Shristi. I think clearly, both HDFC Bank and Bajaj Finserv, which is the holding company for Bajaj Finance, these are companies, where I believe a lot of upside has already happened. I think HDFC Bank has given a very, tepid kind of business outlook. So I would suggest that even if the investor wants to buy into, let's say, HDFC Bank, it's better that, the quarter one numbers are out. HDFC Bank definitely qualifies as a good long-term bet, but I think looking at the kind of business outlook which has been shared, I think it clearly remains to be seen how the bank overcomes the challenges of competition and obviously slower deposit growth rate. So I would say that HDFC Bank around 1500 rupees could be a good bet. I would wait for a correction to come in here because numbers for the quarter one are unlikely to be solid, and plus the commentary which comes out from the management is going to be very critical. Overall, the banking sector is expected to post a quite tepid show in the quarter one. And I think once we get the commentary, I think one will get a better assessment. So I think it's better to enter the stock, when the Q1 numbers are out and the management commentary is also put out. At that time, there would be better clarity. So I think HDFC Bank would be my choice, but post the Q1 numbers. I think, within the banking space, Federal Bank and IDFC First Bank, these are two stocks which I think, an investor can definitely look at doing an SIP. The best part is that, both these stocks are available at reasonable valuations. Federal Bank has given a decent business outlook and I think has got a very, solid balance sheet, very strong CASA as well as deposit growth rates expected. And I think IDFC First Bank also is one of those banks which is growing very aggressively with a CASA of almost 50 odd percent and plus, net interest margins of almost 3.5 to 4%. So I think, in both these stocks, depending on the capital the investor wants to invest, I would suggest that, an SIP year for the next 2 to 3 years would definitely prove to be quite rewarding. And these could be two banks where, the investor can take the benefit from the current price. I think, Cheryl, Bajaj Finance is a stock which is like now a compounder stock. I think clearly, I think in terms of the NBFC space, they have made their position very strong. The company has got a very good asset quality number, plus the disbursements also in the first quarter are pretty healthy. Customer additions also have been good. But I think one thing the investor should note is that, in these kind of stocks, one could obviously expect a moderate return of say 15 to 18% because these are already identified stocks. So I think, your capital is safe, but price upside is also going to be fairly limited. So I think if the investor wants a bigger upside, then I think he should look at stocks like, Geo Finance, which has entered the financial services space and which is going to create a huge disruption in the financial services segment over the next, say, 2 to 3 years. So if he continues to hold here, I think he should expect decent returns, considering the fact that Bajaj Finance is now already an identified story. And I think, due to this, probably the compounding effect will come in, but expect 15 to 18% returns annually, which is, I think, quite decent for a stock like Bajaj Finance. Yeah, I think, I think AB Capital is the holding company of the Birlas, which holds considerable business interest in various financial segments like ARC, the mutual fund business, as well as the broking business and the wealth management business. So I think clearly, if the investor has a 2 to 3 year view, I think looking at the kind of buoyancy in capital markets, plus the kind of money which is being raised, in the public issue as a follow-on public offer kind of route, there's going to be a huge kind of opportunity for financial intermediaries like AB Capital. So I think, you need to give in a little time and patience here. The stock has jumped significantly from lower levels. And I think if the investor can give at least say 2 years here, then I think one can definitely expect a decent risk reward. So I think if the investor is already holding on, I think he should continue to hold. I would believe that FY25 should be significantly better compared to last year. And I think even at the current levels, if one were to buy, I think keeping a 2 year view can give a decent risk reward. I think if I recollect, this company is now going to be taken over by JSW Infra. And I think possibly, we don't know whether it's going to be a complete takeover or whether it's a merger. But I think definitely long-term prospects now look quite encouraging, considering the fact that the company has got a decent, asset with it. And I think a promoter like JSW Infra can obviously get long-term tangible benefits from this acquisition. So, unless the investor has got a couple of years in mind, typically, if the investor can wait for at least minimum 12 to 18 months, I think he could definitely consider investing in Navkar Corporation. But I think one should take a long-term call here. In the short term, we are really not clear as to what is the merger strategy and how value is going to migrate for this company via this acquisition. But yes, longer term, I think definitely we believe this company will do well. So keep a 2-year view, and I think one can accumulate here. No, I think Cheryl, he's done a good strategy of remaining invested in IDBI Bank. In fact, I remember IDBI Bank at one point of time had a asset quality number of almost 25%, and that has now come down drastically. I think the bank has done a great job in building the balance sheet in a much better way. And now the bigger trigger for IDBI Bank is that the government has seriously considered divesting this bank to some private investor or some strategic investor. In fact, we were expecting some deal announcement, in fact, in last year's budget, but did not fructify. My sense is that the stock looks pretty attractive even at these levels, and I think now the bank is growing quite aggressively. I think it is one of those PSU banks which is now all poised to do well in FY25. So I think if the event does happen, there is a strategic investor or a private sector buyer who takes over the bank, and the government finally divests this investment. That would definitely be a big trigger point for IDBI Bank. So I think I would suggest to the investor continue to hold for the next 12 to 15 months. We could expect some announcements in the forthcoming budget and probably FY25 some deal announcement. And that could be a big re-rating exercise for the stock. So continue to hold. I think Union Bank, according to me, I think definitely if you're looking at a slightly longer term time frame, then I think the bank should do well. Here also, I think, despite the fact that it's a smaller PSU bank, the asset quality has improved. The loan disbursements have also improved. And I think we are expecting very strong announcements in the budget on infrastructure, corporate capex, which presents a very large opportunity, for public sector banks like Union Bank. So I think one has to be a little patient here. Keeping a time frame of 12 to 18 months, I think one can continue to hold. I think Man Infra is a real estate company, Shristi. So I don't know whether the government would specifically give real estate any significant boost. But I think the government is definitely looking at affordable housing segment booster in the coming budget. And I think Man Infra has got a very large order book. Most importantly, it's prominently figuring into redevelopment of a lot of projects in Bombay. It's a well-managed company, and one of the big positives for the company is that it's a net debt-free kind of company, which is very unique in the real estate space. So I think if the investor wants to take a position here, he could possibly do a small SIP here. The stock has corrected from higher levels, but I think over the next say 12 to 18 months, as more projects fructify and more projects are monetized, I think you could see fair value of around 250 to 60 comfortably. So I think it's definitely a long-term kind of bet, but I think one needs to give in a little more time here. My guess is, Shristi, the stock has jumped significantly, and I think whatever stocks he has, I think he should hold on. Although I personally feel that in the next say 2 years, IREDA is going to be a big beneficiary of the renewable energy kind of boom. The coming budget also is likely to give some bigger boost to the renewable energy sector. So I think the fact remains that the IREDA management itself has said that possibly going forward in FY25 they would be looking at an FPO possibly to raise additional capital. So I think that would be a good time, because normally when companies make an FPO, the stock corrects, as the markets don't like more supply and liquidity as far as the floating stock is concerned. So I think probably you could time the stock when the company announces its FPO, and that would be a better way to play and get into this stock additionally, as longer term prospects are good, but the present valuations seem to be fair to expensive. So I think it's a hold. Fresh buying is not advised. My guess is that all these companies look attractive, but I think Samvardhana Motherson looks pretty attractive if he wants to make a fresh entry. This is a company which operates not only in India but even in the US and the European markets, and I think traction in business has been very solid. I would believe that if the investor has a 12 to 15-month time frame, then I think the auto component business is definitely going to prove very profitable. And I think other companies which he mentioned, like Endurance Technologies, Samsera Engineering, these are also very good bets. But probably at lower levels, one could make a fresh entry. At these levels, I think the Samvardhana Motherson seems to be quite ideally positioned for a decent risk reward. See, Lancer Container is a logistic company, and I think they have been doing pretty well. In fact, the investor seems to have gotten at a slightly higher level. But I think hopefully, I think logistics is one area which should do well, overall if the economy grows and GDP growth expands. So I think, they operate a very unique business model. They have been quite profitable right from day one. My sense is that in the maritime logistic kind of industry, it's a fairly well-known player where it caters to small and medium enterprises. So I think if the investor can hold on for the next 12, 18 months, I think one can definitely expect the stock to outperform and give a decent risk reward. So I think the only solution is I think a little bit of patience is required. The stock needs to be held on for a slightly longer term kind of time.